This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Relative calm in Burkina Faso after a military takeover, but the ousted president's whereabouts are still unknown. Africa Cup of Nations matches in Cameroon are relocated after a stadium stampede kills 8 people. And the US and NATO place troops on high alert as tensions over Ukraine continue. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. The East African community loses $3.4 billion in trade to coronavirus restrictions in 2020. And traders in Nigeria still unable to access foreign currency despite commitments from the president. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Lindy.
Thank you so much, Uche. Well, this evening, all eyes are on Burkina Faso, where a military takeover has taken place. Let's begin now with what we know so far about the situation in the country. The continent is tonight waiting to hear where Burkina Faso is headed. That's after the military announced they had taken over. Now, that announcement was made on Monday evening. The military faction involved stated they had removed Burkina Faso's President Roch Kabore from office. Some citizens supporting the military action poured into the streets to celebrate. The president's whereabouts are still unknown. Now, the regional bloc ECOWAS has issued a statement saying President Kabore resigned under threat, intimidation and pressure from the military. French President Emmanuel Macron says he has been informed the ousted President Roch Kabore is in good health and is not being threatened in any way. Macron says the situation appears calm. The events in Burkina Faso have elicited condemnation from the United States, the UN, ECOWAS and the G5 Sahel group. Now, UN Chief Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned developments in Burkina Faso, calling on leaders behind the attempted coup to lay down their weapons. The African Union and the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, have also expressed concern. The sentiments come as a faction of the military announced they had removed the president from office, citing Kabore's inability to reunite the nation and fight jihadists. During the televised announcement, the coup leaders declared Kabore's government had been dissolved, the constitution suspended, and the country's borders closed.
After 2 days of confusion and fear in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, the army made a broadcast.
The MPSR has decided to take its responsibilities before history, the national and international community. This movement, which includes all sections of the army and security, has decided to end the post of President Kabore this January 24, 2022.
While some Burkinabés celebrated over the announcement, the broadcast has sparked fresh security concerns. President Kabore has not been seen since heavy gunfire erupted from several military camps on Sunday. The United Nations, the African Union, and West African Bloc ECOWAS are worried.
Secretary General is following developments in Burkina Faso with deep concern. He's particularly worried about the whereabouts and safety of President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, as well as the worsening security situation following the coup carried out on January 23rd by sections of the armed forces. The United Nations reiterates its full commitment to the preservation of the constitutional order and reaffirms its support to the people of Burkina Faso in their efforts to find solutions to the multifaceted challenges facing the country.
The military says the takeover had been carried out without violence and that those detained were in a secure location.
The MPSR also reassures the partners and friends of Burkina Faso of our country's firm determination to continue to respect its international commitments, particularly in the area of human rights, and is committed to propose within a reasonable time frame, after consultation with the nation's active forces, a timetable for a return to a constitutional order accepted by all. Long live Burkina Faso. May God bless our nation.
The soldiers mutinying were said to be demanding more support in their fight against insurgents. Kabore had faced waves of protests in recent months, amid frustration over the killing of civilians and soldiers by militants linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIL.
Now, of course, we will continue to monitor developments coming out of Burkina Faso, but for now, let's turn our attention to Cameroon. The Confederation of African Football has begun investigations into a stampede that took place in the capital Yaoundé right before a match between Cameroon and Comoros. At least 8 people died during the incident and tens of others were injured and rushed to a nearby medical facility. The Continental Soccer Body has ordered the local organizing committee to conduct an inquiry and submit a report by Friday. Here's more from CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma.
Excitement turned sour at the Yaoundé Olimba Stadium in Cameroon after stampede broke out. The incident left more than half a dozen people dead just before an Africa Cup of Nations football match. The host nation was facing Comoros for a round of 16 game intended to push the victor into the quarterfinals.
We arrived and we entered, and there was a barrier and there was a policeman. He said, "No, wait, you will enter after, as soon as halftime starts." My brothers, the Cameroonians, did not understand. There were people behind who said, "Push." I was among them, and when I saw that, I left to enter from the northwest. They stayed there, and that's when someone left to open the barrier, because the barrier closes on the outside. So someone pulled, and they pushed like that. Someone fell on top of others. There were even babies.
Just now, there were 50 people. I saw nearly 50 people on the ground.
Witnesses say fans got restless after stadium stewards locked a gate to the facility as kickoff drew nearer. The stampede was the first such disaster of the tournament, which is considered Africa's biggest sporting event. The Confederation of African Football says that it is running investigations to determine what exactly happened. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
The Uganda Red Cross confirms at least 9 people have died after floods washed away their homes in Kisoro in the west of the country. An unconfirmed number of people are feared missing. Isabel Nakiria has more.
The flash floods are said to have been triggered by heavy rains. Water came gushing down the slopes of Mount Muhavura, uprooting trees and boulders and sweeping away homes and submerging others. Bridges and roads have been washed away, making the area inaccessible. Mount Muhavura has a crater lake on top of it that sometimes bursts its banks during the heavy rains. The last floods in this area occurred in October 2021, killing 1 person and destroying homes.
Our team is working alongside the UPDF, the army and the police, as well as the community, to extricate bodies of those that have died in the incident, but also support those that are missing, because we have families that have indicated to us that they have missing family members. So our search and rescue team continues, while we have another response team that is supporting the assessment on ground.
9 bodies, including that of a child, were retrieved from the rubble. Dozens more are feared missing. The sub-counties of Nyarusiza, Muramba and Bunagana near the border with the DRC are affected. The Red Cross says the affected communities are in urgent need of humanitarian help. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
At least 7 migrants have died trying to reach Italy's Lampedusa island. The boat carrying almost 300 people was intercepted by the Italian Coast Guard. The deceased are believed to have died from hypothermia. Hermione Kitson reports from the capital.
Details have emerged of another ill-fated journey to Italy. Local authorities spotted the boat when it was about 50 kilometres off the coast of Lampedusa, south of Sicily, overnight. They found 3 bodies on board. Another 4 people died before the vessel reached port. It's believed the victims all died of hypothermia. Lampedusa Mayor Salvatore Martello confirmed the death toll and said the vessel was carrying 280 migrants, mainly from Bangladesh and Egypt. The prosecutor's office of Agrigento is open opened an investigation into the deaths, and if any of the migrants rescued are identified as commanders of the boat, they could face charges. Lampedusa is known as the door of Europe, as it's Italy's southernmost point and a frequent landing site for migrants seeking refuge from Libya or Tunisia. In recent months, there has been a worrying increase in the number of boats making the treacherous journey. Government figures show more than 1,700 migrants have disembarked in Italy's ports so far this year. Mayor Martello says the latest tragedy is unacceptable and that his tiny island has been forgotten by the Italian government and EU authorities. He's calling for urgent help both from Italy and internationally. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Rome.
Well, let's return now to our coverage of the military takeover in Burkina Faso that has ousted President Roch Kabore. Let's go live to Ouagadougou, where we are joined by our correspondent Lucien Kambo-Malbe, a local journalist in the area. Lucien, what is the latest on the ground? And in particular, has there been any word on the whereabouts of the ousted President Roch Kabore?
At the time being, we do not have any information about President Roch Kabore, and during the daytime, many movements have been giving the opinion about what's going on. And some social movement went to the place of a nation for a protest, and they said that they are for the military coup. And at the same time, there are 4 political parties who demand a rapid restoration of constitutional order. And those parties claim that this cap is about to restore the compaoré system vomited up by the people of Burkina Faso in 2014. And according to those parties, they say that they are convicted that the political problem can be solved outside of armies and weapons interfering in the political ground.
Now, we do understand that there has been relative calm throughout the country since this military takeover was announced. But tell us, has this takeover affected public services and daily life in the capital, Ouagadougou?
In Ouagadougou right now, life is still going on. People are still doing their businesses, but the public services, as the junta said yesterday, are led by the general secretaries at this time. And life is still going on, when you can see even before some special institutions such as the National Television and Radio, there are the soldiers standing there. Then life is still going on as every day, but it's the soldiers who are leading things. That's what I can see at the time about the situation.
We're also seeing that small crowds have gathered in parts of the country in support of this military takeover. But what do we know about this military unit that is behind these recent events, the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration? And what do we know about its leader, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandogo Dambia?
The military unit is not well known outside the country and even inside the country. But what we can note is that yesterday during the statement, the junta announced that the movement brings together all the components of a Burkina Defense and Security Forces. And about the leader, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandogo, he is 41 years old, and in our context, he's young. He is a former member of a presidential security regiment of former President Blaise Compaoré. He has been also the commander of a 12th Commando Infantry Regiment in Ouagadougou, a city of Burkina Faso. After advanced training outside of the country and back in Burkina Faso, Lieutenant Colonel Damiba was appointed commanding officer of a 30th support and commander of a regiment in Camp General Babassi. After that, after the terrorism attack in Inata in November 2021, where more than 50 soldiers dead, Lieutenant Colonel Damiba was appointed commander of a 3rd military region, which covers Ouagadougou, Koudougou, Fadang, Gourma, and Manga. He is also a writer, and he is the author of the book West African Army and Terrorism: Uncertain Answers. He is from the promotion the 92nd promotion of a Kajigo Military Brittany, PMP. He is from the 7th promotion IMGN, the George Namwando Military Academy of Po in Burkina Faso. Lieutenant Colonel Damimba is nicknamed Army because he is very strict on military issues. That's what I can say at the time being about the military who have taken the power and about the leader Damimba.
Well, indeed, a lot of eyes will remain fixed on the young Lieutenant Colonel as he holds a lot of Burkina Faso's future in his hands. Thank you so much there to Lucien Malbe joining us from Burkina Faso. Turning our attention now to international news. As the crisis around the Ukraine continues, the United States has placed 8,500 troops on high alert. NATO, meanwhile, says it plans to enhance its troop presence in Eastern Europe. Moscow has repeatedly denied plans to invade Ukraine and has accused the West of hysteria. CGTN's Stephanie Fried reports from Eastern Ukraine.
The latest development on the ground here in Ukraine, the U.S. State Department advising U.S. citizens to leave Ukraine. There are an estimated 10 to 15,000 U.S. passport holders living in Ukraine. The U.S. State Department is saying that that if a war erupts here, they cannot be responsible for pulling people out. They can't necessarily evacuate people. As well, the U.S. is pulling out families of diplomats, U.S. diplomats here in Ukraine. U.K. doing the same. They're pulling out some of their diplomats, actually. From my point here, I'm on the border of the Luhansk Oblast. That is a major region of eastern Ukraine that was taken control of by Russian-backed forces back in 2014. So this is a front line. It's also a line that gets a lot of activity in terms of firing back and forth, automatic fire, sniper fire. I'm told here that reinforcements haven't arrived to this base for the Ukraine army, but they are using some of that drone technology that Turkey sent to Ukraine. They're using drones they have here anti-tank drones, observational drones, and again, they haven't received backup reinforcement, more troops, but certainly their expectation here on the front line is that if there is a war, if there is an attack on the part of Russia, then yes, there will be reinforcement here. Stephanie Fried, CGTN in eastern Ukraine.
Officials in South Korea say Pyongyang has test-fired 2 cruise missiles into the sea off its east coast. Local reports say the apparent launch is being analyzed by South Korean and U.S. intelligence agencies. If confirmed as a test, it would mark the 5th this year. Cruise missile launches by the DPRK are not banned by UN resolutions. Denuclearization talks between the DPRK and the U.S. remain stalled. The DPRK says it is open to talks, but only if the United States drops what it calls hostile policies. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met the president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, in Beijing. Xi Jinping said that after more than 6 years of preparations, the Beijing Winter Games will be held smoothly as scheduled. He added that Beijing would honor its commitments to deliver a simple, safe and splendid Olympic Games. Bach praised China for its efficiency, determination and dynamism. He said measures taken by China would ensure a safe, smooth and successful Olympic Games. Meanwhile, President Xi Jinping also chaired a virtual summit commemorating the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and 5 Central Asian countries. The event is the first meeting between China and the 5 heads of state of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Xi said China wants to work towards building a closer community with Central Asia and one with a shared future. The 5 leaders say they look forward to attending the Beijing Winter Olympics opening ceremony next week, adding that China will overcome the recent COVID outbreak and are sure the Winter Games will go along as planned. Right, turning to the coronavirus pandemic now, Tunisian health authorities confirm that the Omicron variant is now dominant in Tunisia. The health department is closely monitoring the Omicron wave amid concerns over oxygen supply and heightened pressure on hospitals. Adnan Chouachi reports.
Health authorities say more than 90% of the positive cases do not have symptoms. The Omicron variant is now dominant in the North African state.
The current epidemiological situation is difficult. It's alarming because recent data shows that the number of positive cases is going up. We expect the situation to get worse. However, it's still manageable because the pandemic is under control, but we will reach the peak very soon.
670 patients are currently hospitalized. Experts explain that the severe cases of coronavirus are recorded among patients who were not vaccinated or did not complete the vaccination protocols.
Tunisians must get the booster jabs because 2 shots are not enough. They could still get severe symptoms and need hospitalization. The 3rd dose boosts the immune system. It's unacceptable that many citizens did not get the 1st dose. They don't have any reason or pretext for this behavior. We can overcome the crisis with mass vaccination.
The number of people registered on the national vaccination platform evax.tn has reached 7.8 million this week. More than 3 million citizens remain unvaccinated. Vaccinated Tunisians say they are angry at those who refuse to get vaccinated.
We all know people who died of coronavirus. The health department is providing free and safe vaccines. We should all get vaccinated to save lives. I can't understand why some people still reject vaccination. I got my booster shot and I'm free to go anywhere while respecting preventive measures.
The health department in Tunisia has updated the protocol of the quarantine period as well as the conditions for the resumption of work in the public and private sectors for people infected with the coronavirus. The quarantine period is now 5 days if the result of the PCR test is positive. It is extended to 7 days in case of persistent COVID symptoms. However, the resumption of work after that period is mandatory without a negative PCR test. Tunisia has recorded more than 26,000 deaths since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country in March 2020. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune is in Cairo for a 2-day state visit. He discussed boosting bilateral ties with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The visit is the first by an Algerian head of state in some 14 years. More on Tebboun's visit to the Egyptian capital now with CGTN's Adel Al-Makhrawi.
Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune began his international trips this year with his first official stop in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Keen to highlight the importance of this visit to his nation, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi welcomed Tebboune at the airport upon his arrival on Monday. The 2 leaders held expanded talks which covered all issues of concern to both North African nations.
Consultation between us over bilateral ties is continuous and over the role that both Egypt and Algeria lead to contribute through Arab and Africa cooperation to what leads to the security and stability of the region. We stressed on the necessity to work on preserving our position in Africa and in the South Mediterranean region. Egypt has a geostrategic role that can extend bridges of connectivity from Africa to Asia.
Sisi and Tebboune agreed to boost investment, trade, and work on resolving all obstacles that hindered their comprehensive economic ties from growing. They renewed their stance of a 2-state solution based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Instability in their neighboring Libya was thoroughly explored.
We discussed the developments in the Libyan crisis. We have agreement in our views to hold the presidential and parliamentary elections simultaneously. We call for the evacuation of all foreign fighters and mercenaries without exception and in a timely manner. That is to apply UN Security Council resolutions and the outcomes of the Berlin and Paris conference so that Libya would be under Libyan control.
Cairo and Algiers will reactivate their suspended joint economic and political cooperation platforms as they seek stronger ties. They vowed to heighten their security cooperation to face regional terrorism. Tebboune has also consulted Sisi on the means to make the Arab Summit, which Algeria will host this year, succeed. Relations between Egypt and Algeria used to be tense during Presidents Mubarak and Bouteflika's tenure. President Sisi took the initiative to mend these ties by making Algeria his first international visit after he took office in 2014. Now the two biggest economies in North Africa say they will cooperate in all fields to make the Middle East and Africa prosper. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, warns that Uganda is falling short of achieving the global goal of ensuring free, equitable and quality primary and secondary education by 2030. Globally, countries have set sustainable development goals, but there are fears the majority are not on track to achieve them. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria has more.
Madina Bokira is now a shop attendant in Kampala after dropping out of school in the senior 2 grade. Her family couldn't afford her education after a poor farm harvest. But Madina is hurt because her dad chose to pay fees for her elder brother over her.
My elder brother was in senior 4. Dad was paying for him and for me too, and yet there are other children in primary school. Then he told me, since your brother is in a higher class, let me pay for him and he completes his course. As for you, go look for a job.
Madina hopes to save some money and learn skills in hairdressing. Millions of boys and girls like her in sub-Saharan Africa will not complete their primary and secondary education by 2030, says a new UN report. Uganda is among countries that need to do more to improve learning in public schools. Uganda offers free education in public schools, but parents top up a small fee for food and stationery material. Public schools are also congested, affecting the standards of education. The UN says many countries like Uganda are failing to meet their commitments in giving quality education.
In sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, only 2 out of 3 children will be completing 1 year of preschool, even though the target is, of course, for all of them to do so. We also see that maybe not even all children will be achieving primary school, which is a target that the world had already set for 2015.
The report points at increasing poverty levels in Africa, conflict, ill health in children, and spending less on their budgets in education, which is delaying their academic development. The closure of schools globally due to the pandemic has also been a major concern for the UN. Uganda just reopened schools after close to 2 years.
We know that children who learn from a distance do not benefit equally from these conditions. There are major challenges to be overcome. And of course, we know that for the majority of children in sub-Saharan Africa, distance education has not really worked because children lack the resources to be continuing the learning.
Other countries with very low completion rates in education are Tanzania, Somalia, and Zimbabwe. The UN is urging countries not to lose hope, but pay urgent attention to improving learning at all levels of education. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
And let's now go to Uche for your latest business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The East African community loses $3.4 billion in trade to coronavirus restrictions in 2020. And traders in Nigeria still unable to access foreign currency despite commitments from the president.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Well, let's start off in the region. Containment measures instituted by East African nations cost the region a total of $3.4 billion in lost trade, and that's when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit in 2020. Now, a draft report on East Africa community trade and investment for 2020 now paints a picture of the extent of the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the region. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo reporting.
Restricted movement and lost trade links between East African countries due to COVID-19 cost the region's economies dearly. A new East Africa Community draft report shows economic growth in the region dropped from an average of 5.4% in 2019 to 2.3% in 2020. Some economists say that the varying paths chosen by each of the region's 6 member states to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic were largely behind the slump.
We understand that it was a new case, so each country was trying to, build and design its own strategy on how to combat COVID-19. But our differences were huge to an extent that it affected how we trade each other, how we visit each other, and all aspects of life was affected.
Trade experts believe the report indicates just how interdependent the region's economies are. A summit of East African heads of state recently resolved that joint strategies were the best path to economic recovery and dealing with any new COVID-19 waves.
Travel within the region has been a big challenge for the cross-border traders and EAC citizens due to multiple testing at varying costs. To this, the Secretariat has developed an EAC pass, and the EAC pass will be able to make it easier for citizens to travel.
According to the report, total investment in the region declined by almost 50% in 2020. However, exports from the region were spared a decline, rising by around 3% in the same year. The African Development Bank predicts that the economies of East African countries will grow by an average of 4.9% this year. Now, how the bloc presents a united front in dealing with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic may mean the difference between achieving this figure or not. While the effects of COVID-19 were far-reaching on the region's economies, the pandemic has had some positives. Experts say that it taught countries in the region to look inwards to grow their economies.
If you look at the gold production in Tanzania, percentage-wise, if it's 100%, then over 70% is being mined by artisan miners. So they contribute a lot. That was not the case back in the days.
While the worst effects of the COVID-19 pandemic may be over, less than 10% of East Africa's population is vaccinated against the disease. The speed of which authorities can get the region's citizens vaccinated will determine just how fast the region can return to a resemblance of normalcy. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, local manufacturers say they are still battling with an acute shortage of foreign exchange to keep their operations running. Now, when representatives of the manufacturers met with Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari a few weeks ago, he assured them that measures were being taken to enhance access to forex in the country. Well, as CGTN's Deji Badamosi now reports, the manufacturers want the country's central bank to act fast on the president's pledge.
Nigeria has been battling forex scarcity for a number of years now. And if there's one sector where the situation has been telling, it's the country's manufacturing sector. And one manufacturer who's been feeling the heat is Michael Adebayo, who runs a textile factory in Lagos. His factory has not been running at optimal capacity for a while now, as he struggled to access foreign exchange from the official market to purchase critical raw materials and machine parts.
If you bid for $100,000 naira and $100,000, you cannot get it.
we have to split the purchase of our forex. Some you will ask for $120,000. They will tell you they can only give you 20,000. Maybe you have to bid about 5 or 6 times before you can get that money. And remember, by the time you are doing that, the offshore interest will be going.
With access to forex and the official market limited, most manufacturers turn to the expensive black market for their forex needs, adding to the cost of production and making their products more expensive than competitions from abroad.
It is an opportunity for many manufacturers, especially those who want to remain there for a long time, to start thinking of having to source for the raw materials from within the country and create one, so that no matter what happens with foreign exchange, no matter what happens with international trade, they will always be producing. In fact, if we had such manufacturers right now, the size of inflation we are seeing arising from exchange rates wouldn't have been there for them. They would have been beating competition, so to say.
At a recent meeting with local manufacturers, President Muhammadu Buhari promised to ensure improved access to forests for local industries. The manufacturers say they are holding on to the president's pledge.
Yeah, the president's promise has set in a process of dialogue between us and the CBN, which we expect to commence very soon, in the sense that we are being asked now to find a way of making sure that when our members bid, that is prioritized. And we are looking forward seriously to a speed up in this process, because it has actually not gained traction, but there's indication that the president's promise is being worked upon and is going to be realized.
In recent times, Nigeria has seen its forex earnings from crude sale go up as a result of higher prices in the global oil market. That means the central bank might be disposed to meeting more forex demands, especially from local manufacturers. If that happens, manufacturers like Adebayo can at least heave some.
Now in Tunisia, tourism revenues edged up by 19% to $15 million in the first 2 weeks of 2022, and that's compared to the same period last year. That's according to data from the country's central bank. Tourism is one of the pillars of the economy in the North African state, but has been hit quite hard since the outbreak of COVID-19 in March 2020, while CGTN's Adnan Ishaushi has the latest on the tourism data from Tunis.
Tunisian authorities are optimistic of a gradual recovery in the tourism industry that has been battered by the pandemic, leaving tens of thousands of employees without jobs and thousands of hotels and tourist resorts shut down. The vital sector contributes just over 10% of Tunisia's gross domestic product.
This vital sector is now recovering, but the negative repercussions of the health crisis are still impacting all tourism professionals.
The minister added that tourism employees and tourist guides will receive an exceptional monthly allowance of $70 for 6 months until the end of June 2022.
The crisis in tourism is social, economic and financial. The government's strategy is to support the employees and businesses until the resumption of normal tourist activity. Our strategy aims to preserve jobs and to save tourism businesses from disappearing.
The 2022 state budget provides for several tax and financial measures to alleviate the impact of the pandemic. Companies and individuals operating in the tourism and handicraft sectors will pay the profit tax for 2020 on 5 equal installments this year.
In Tunisia, we have around 50,000 craftsmen. Less than 10,000 are still working, while the majority were forced into unemployment.
The state aims to help tourism professionals, including artisans, who suffered since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country. Many economic activities are directly linked to tourism and handicrafts. If one is paralyzed, the whole industry collapses.
Economists assert that the resurgence of the COVID-19 crisis and the increasing uncertainty in Tunisia and the world are delaying recovery in the tourism sector, as well as the aviation industry.
Tunisian professionals fear the devastating impact of the fifth wave of the pandemic and the subsequent travel restrictions on the tourism and aviation industries. Authorities have put in place an emergency plan to mitigate the impact of the health crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And in Egypt, a designer has created a smart dress embedded with a QR code on its sleeve, which the wearer can scan for a guide to the country's most iconic tourist destinations. Here's more on that story.
Alaa Ahmed El Sheshtawi has created an innovative way for tourists to blend ancient Egyptian fashion with information technology. The designer made a dress embroidered with pharaonic designs and a QR code that, once scanned, offers information on the country's top tourist attractions.
This is the code I used in the design. I sewed it onto the sleeve so that it doesn't take up too much of the dress and blends into the design. It has all the data that I uploaded onto the application, which you can find on the phone and is available in 3 different languages. All you have to do is scan the code and browse through the information, which includes all of Egypt's tourist attractions. And all you have to do is pick one, and all the information on them will appear in any of the 3 languages available.
Wearers can use their mobile phones to scan the code, taking them to an application with names, addresses, operating times, and prices of Egypt's many sites.
There is also information on the artifacts available at each site, which tourists can use to learn about what they are seeing, especially if they don't have a guide with them. My dream is that this idea can be adopted and to have the ability to design several dresses, because I've only done one dress. I want to create all my designs and make others for men, women and children, and have a brand under my name that specializes in pharaonic culture that will help Egypt. I want there to be several branches in Egypt and abroad, which is something that will encourage tourists to visit, and at the same time, I want to develop the application and the information available in it.
Originally created for her university graduation project, Ahmed requires funding to bring her brand, Pharaohs, to life and create several other designs for dresses she has sketched out. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, trade ties between China and Africa reached an all-time high in 2021 at an estimated $254 billion. We'll be taking a look at the trends and projections for the partners going forward. Do stay with us. My colleague Lindy Mtongana will be back with more news after this.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Sports news now, and we start here in Kenya, where Kakamega County is currently hosting the country's 18th edition of the Sports Personality of the Year Awards. The awards are a celebration of last season's spectacular performances across all sporting disciplines in the country. This year's guest of honor is 5,000-meter Olympic champion Joshua Cheptegei of Uganda. Kenya's marathon great Eliud Kipchoge has been eyeing the Sportsman of the Year award against rally driver Carl Tundo, who won the Kenya National Rally Championship as well as the Africa Rally Championship last season. Africa's fastest man, Ferdinand Omanyala, is also in contention for the top men's award. In the women's category, 1,500-meter Olympic champion Faith Kipyegon faces off with female rally driver Maxine Wahome, Olympic marathon champion Perez Chepchirchir, Vihiga Queens, and Harambee Starlet star player Gentrix Shikangwa, tennis player Angela Okutoi, and volleyball star Sharon Chepchumba. Well, let's bring you more on the ongoing awards. We are now joined by Chris Mbaisi, who is the chairman of the SOYA panel of judges. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Now, last year was certainly a very good year for Kenya's sportsmen and women, with great performances across all disciplines. In your opinion, who do you think will take the top awards this year?
It is very difficult for me to tell who will take it because the process is such that we only vote and wait for the announcement. Nobody knows who will win today, but the competition is definitely going to be tight.
A tight competition indeed, as you say. We also know that the athletic season is about to kick off. Do you think some of these stars that are nominated tonight might be returning to the awards next year?
I think almost all of them, because you look at, for example, Faith, they are preparing. Chepchirchir has been top of her game. Omanyala is now just breathing fire and he wants to go for the top. And Eliud Kipchoge is evergreen. So I think at the end of the day, we are going to have a good season this year.
Well, thank you so much for that. That's Chris Mbaisi, the chairman of the SOYA panel of judges. We await the final announcement on the winners of the year. Right, let's turn to AFCON news now in Cameroon, where Morocco